speaker here. And I just want to say something. Kathy came here. It took her a long time to get here. We spoke with her about more than 10 years ago and tried to get her out here to speak, right? And she had other engagements or whatever. Anyway, more than 10 years later, she finally comes out here to speak. She was only 19 then, I think. So. But anyway, after 10 years of trying to get her to come out here, she's finally here. So I want to introduce Kathy H. from Pittsburgh. Let's give her a big hand.
Let it flow.
Hi, everyone. I'm an addict named Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Wow, huh? I want to thank God first and foremost for that's quite intimidating, you know. I want to thank God for so much grace and mercy. I want to thank God first and foremost for that. And I want to definitely thank the Sierra Sage region for inviting me again. Because I don't know about you, but I didn't get invited many places during active addiction, and I rarely got invited back if I did get invited anywhere. And my experience has been that I was actually put out of some of the worst places that most people wouldn't even want to frequent and told not to come back. So even I am using a microphone.
Yeah.
Some habits die hard, right? But I really just want to say thanks because I still am impressed with how far recovery has brought me and what Narcotics Anonymous has done in my life. And after 22 years, I still am amazed. I have never lost my zest for recovery. I have never had a moment where I didn't have gratitude for the gifts that were given to me from this program. And I want to thank the members, especially, that came here before me, that kept the doors open to the meetings so that we would have a place to recover. So I just want to take a moment to thank everybody. So I just want to start off by saying I want to thank everybody that did the service work for this convention. It's an absolutely wonderful convention. You are the kindest, nicest group of people. No, sincerely, you know what I mean? Because when you travel, you have different experiences with different members, and it's not always the most pleasant ones. Some people teach me how to practice principles more so than others. And so I'm grateful for all of them, but you guys have just made it really easy to be here and very pleasant to relax and just enjoy the spirit of recovery. So I just salute you. I salute you for being you. I was first introduced to Narcotics Anonymous in 1986. I came here after, people call it, I was here as a result of a nudge from a judge, let's just say. I came here after doing a 4-year sentence in a federal penitentiary, and I used to, that was my claim to fame. We were talking about this earlier, where I used to say, I don't know, but I did Fed time. You know what I'm saying? Not like state or county. I did Fed time. But the real deal was that it was just a bunch of addicts that got together writing scripts and just doing what we had to do to get the next one. And they literally made a federal case out of it. We all wound up with court-appointed attorneys. Nobody had anything. You know what I mean? Like it just turned into a big thing. And after getting released from the penitentiary, I got sent to a halfway house. And while I was at that halfway house, they made us go to meetings in order to get our little notes signed so that we could get like free time and passes out of the house. So when I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I came here strictly to get a note signed. I didn't really come for anything else. I remember coming, I had a year clean after doing a 4-year sentence, so you could do the math on that one. And I remember picking up a year key tag and people saying, "How'd you do it? How'd you do it?" And I remember thinking to myself, what is wrong with these people? How'd I do it? I was locked the fuck up. Like, come on now. How does anybody do it? Like, seriously, is there any other way to really do it? Like, is there really addicts that can use, that have like the ability and options to use and don't? Because I didn't really get it. I really didn't get the whole concept of like living clean. And I remember I came in here as a conscientious objector, let's just say. And so I would listen to the things that you said, but I really didn't buy into the program. And some of the things I had trouble with were, and this just goes to the whole thing of talking about in the first step when it says reservations will rob us of the benefits this program has to offer. Like, I'm a perfect example of that. Because I came in here and you guys, I listened to the readings and I listened to you guys share, and one of the things you said was that alcohol was a drug. And I argued with you that alcohol was a refreshment, not a drug. I really had difficulty understanding why, if something was legal, you were making such an issue of it. I really, seriously couldn't even fathom the idea of living life and not taking something. And I couldn't even think, how could you possibly want to take that too? And so I disagreed with you on that one. I used to be told back when I first got clean, if you ain't praying, you ain't staying, they used to say. And I used to think to myself, I had a really hard time with the whole concept of God. I really struggled with it. I thought this whole thing was going to turn. I don't know if any of you ever had this experience where I really was not pleased with who I was. I really was not pleased with who I was or who I had become, but I was afraid that if I changed, it would get worse. Because that was my experience. After years of progression, I lost my ability to have any hope. Like initially when we start using, it's like, okay, you have these like lines that you say, I won't cross this line. If I ever do this, then I'll stop. And as the years progressed, I kept crossing those lines, and as I would cross that line, I would lose hope that there was ever anything that was going to stop me. And so whenever I heard you guys say, if you ain't praying, you ain't staying, I thought to myself, oh no, they're going to start this religious thing on me, and I'm going to turn into this person that's going to be standing on street corners, chanting steps, handing out IPs, right, with some like a tambourine or some shit, trying to collect money, and I don't want to become that. Like, seriously, like I would rather be a dope fiend than that. So I really couldn't get with that whole thing, if you ain't praying, you ain't staying. The other thing I had trouble with was, now this I could never find in the literature, and I really think somebody made this up. But somebody said, don't get into a relationship for a year. Now, I really thought that that was the women that were saying that, because they just didn't, they were haters, right? And they didn't want me like to get with their man or something. And so they were making, and I couldn't find it in the literature, and I figured, well, they're making stuff up along the way now, and I'm getting played. And besides that, I had been in the penitentiary for 4 years with all women. And please don't tell me. Please don't. Here's what it was. I thought to myself, like, what's the big deal? Like, my experience with relationships was like, if you liked me and I liked you and you were good to go, let's go. Like, what's the big deal, right? And I remember hearing something about in the literature, I don't even remember what edition it was. It was, don't make any major decisions for your first year. And I couldn't think, how could a relationship be a major decision? Why are you making such a fuss over everything? And so that definitely didn't apply to me. And what I'm referring to is not being open-minded to the principles of this program, to the suggestions that people before me were offering to help me. I didn't realize that I would have enough trouble dealing with my own feelings, and then if you added another person's feelings to that pot, that would be just enough to be too much for me to deal with. And I didn't understand that. And I remember people saying, oh, don't let him become your God. And I used to think to myself, no, they've lost it totally. How could a guy become my God? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I barely respect them. How the hell would they become my God? I just couldn't get that concept. And I didn't realize what people meant when they said that was that I tended to, when I got into a relationship with someone, I started to spend more time with them and less time with the people that were helping me in my recovery. And before I knew it, I was calling people less and I was with him more. And before I knew it, he was the one telling me what it was that I needed to be doing. And then eventually, and this happened to me, I started to, instead of building my own relationships in recovery or my own kind of support, I started just attaching to his friends. And then before I knew it, everything about my recovery was about his stuff that he had already established. And whenever things fell apart in the relationship, I found myself alone. And I didn't realize that at the time that people were trying to tell me this. But like I said, these are the kind of things that we call reservations that literally rob us of the benefits this program has to offer. And I don't want to say that any one of those things caused me to relapse, but an accumulation of them just sets the stage. That at any one given moment, any one of those things can cause, and it did. It started off with, I actually was working, which was amazing. And it's a warning when it says, we have so many warnings. Social acceptability does not equal recovery. But for someone who was never socially accepted, it sure feels like it. And it was the first job I had ever had. I went to the penitentiary and learned a trade. And I became an emergency medical technician. It's really bad to have an active addict with sirens. It really is. And so I had my job, and of course, things got a little rough, and I'm going to talk about, how things progress. See, here's the thing. We talk about recovery as progress, not perfection. And if we define progress, it says, as a definition, progress is constantly improving one's skills. So that if we're in our recovery and we're making progress, then we're constantly improving our skills. We're getting better. But we sometimes forget to realize that we have a disease that's progressive, which also has progress in it. And so I'm not talking about using. I'm talking about being clean. In recovery, the disease is progressive. That while I'm in recovery and I'm making progress, the disease is also improving its skills. There's a reason why people with time keep coming back. Because as we stay clean, this disease is treacherous. As we stay clean, when I'm learning things, the disease isn't clueless. Addiction knows all the literature, all the slogans, right? It knows everything that I know about recovery, and it waits in the cut for the opportunity to present itself so that it can again challenge my whole belief system. Look, whenever that we talked about when we talked about the second step, and I always say, like, it's a beautiful thing. The second step has a warning in it. Like we do the first step, and a lot of people, we focus on that first step and admitting powerlessness, and then we kind of move, and we get to this second step, and then, we just come to believe that, the suggestions in the program and, the people in the program, the members in the group and everything, they can help us. But we fail to listen sometimes to, there's a warning in the second step. And it says, don't go over this step with a minimum of concern. It warns us that because, and this is my experience, because I really have to pay attention to what I believe. Because what I believe, look, I remember being at a meeting one time and a guy saying in a meeting, if what you believe doesn't make a difference in your life, then it doesn't make a difference what you believe. And I said, what the heck did he just say? Because he spun me. But whenever I thought, and I said, wait a minute, if what I believe doesn't make a difference in my life, then it doesn't make a difference what I believe. Because we're so good at standing on, well, I don't believe that. Well, that's not what I believe. I just went through this with my son. My son is struggling in active addiction. He would like to think that it's just a habit that got out of control. I, on the other hand, see it as active addiction. I have become the enemy because I am the ultimate weapon. So he avoids me like the plague. And I know it's not him avoiding me. I know it's the disease of addiction avoiding me. It's really hard not to take this shit personal. It's really not easy when you have a child that you are trying to just remember is another addict. And so his sister, who's now in recovery, and they live together, I said to her, I grabbed about 6 IPs, am I an addict? I said, take these home, distribute them throughout the house. Put one in his bed just in case, and hopefully he'll pick it up. So my son calls me crying because he lost his job, he got arrested, and his life is falling apart. I don't know what's going on. Did you see those little pieces of pamphlets that were sitting out in the house? Yeah, I saw them. Okay, well, did you ever, pick one up and read them? No. Why? He said, because I'm afraid it might change the way I think. You hear what I'm saying? I'm talking about having a closed mind. Right? I believed when I came in here, and we were talking about this earlier, I believed things that did not serve me well. Things that I got from the street, things that I got from my childhood, things that I got from experiences in life, that I made a belief system that I thought that was protecting me. So I believed in things like people take kindness for weakness. I believed in things like take it to the grave, right? I believed in things like what goes around comes around. I believed in these things, and I lived my life based on those beliefs. So when I came back to these rooms in 1988, I crawled. You hear me? I crawled back into these rooms. I was bandaged up. I had abscesses all over me. I had lived to use and used to live and almost died. And I crawled back into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. I used to sit in the back. I would keep my hands in my pocket. I used to try to wear gloves till like May because I didn't want anybody to see all the bruises and all the... I reeked of infection. You hear what I'm saying? I had abscesses that were so deep that I reeked of infection. I tried to stay away from people for fear that they would smell the stench that was coming off of me. I used to relate to that Skinner song. They would say, ooh, that smell. Can't you smell that smell? It's the smell of death around us. And I remember I used to walk into galleries up on the hill. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I would go to it got so bad that I'd knock on the gallery door. They wouldn't even leave me in. They'd act like nobody was in there. It was a gallery. Like, they would act like nobody was there because they just couldn't even, like, stand me anymore. And I'd knock on the door, and the door would open, and the smell would hit me in my face. And I used to think to myself, my God, them people need to do something about themselves. And I didn't know that the smell was coming off of me. I just knew it was coming off of them. And when I came in here, I realized it, and I used to sit like away from people so they couldn't smell that smell. And I would listen to the readings, and I would hold on to the seat. And I would do my best to stay as close to the door as I could so when the meeting was over, I could get out quick. And I remember one day, we got into a circle, and I usually always stayed near the door, but the damn circle shifted. You know how they shift the circle? You know where they can't form a damn circle. They do that stuff, and before you know it, you're moved. And instead of me being at the door, I had shifted now to the middle of the room. And I thought to myself, I panicked. I thought to myself, oh shit, I'm stuck in here. And I remember that I used to keep my eyes on the floor. Because if you don't make eye contact, you don't have to talk to anybody. If I can keep my eyes, because if you make eye contact, you have to like acknowledge, hey, hi, how you doing? Like you have to acknowledge people. You got to smile or nod. You got to do something, right? And so I really tried not to look at people, but when they shifted, I looked up so that I could move with the group. And when I looked up, a woman caught my eye. And she looked dead at me. And I thought to myself, oh shit, she's got me. Now wait, we say a lot of times in here that if we don't say we're in pain, that no one will know, but we know. And she knew. And she made contact with me, and we said the prayer, and she still had me in her sight. And I knew it. And so I thought to myself, when the prayer breaks, I'm at the door. I'm heading for the door. But the crowd was too thick to get to the door. Here she comes. Across the circle. She's coming at me. I know I'm going to have to hug this woman. So I think to myself, okay, I'll hug her, but I'm doing the tap and roll. I'm not staying here. I'm just going to tap and I'm going to roll. And so here she comes, and I'm bracing myself because here was my biggest fear. I was afraid that somebody was going to embrace me and that I was going to start to cry. And I knew that I had years of tears in me. And I was so afraid that if I started to cry, I would not be able to stop. And I refuse to let myself fall apart in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. So I would avoid it. So when she comes, I do it. I got her, I tap, I go to roll, and she's not a tap and roll person. She's an embracer. And I say this to say, seriously, the importance of a hug. That why we hug in Narcotics Anonymous. And the importance of one addict hugging another addict. And what that embrace means to another person. Because I was dying. I was dying. And she held on to me, and she said something to me that changed my life. She whispered in my ear, "You don't have to live like that anymore." And something happened. There was something that happened to me. I got my stomach flipped. I got like a rush. I got bumps all over me. I didn't know what just happened to me. I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm gay. Because I couldn't for the life of me figure out what she just did to me. I know today what that is. I didn't know that then. She gave me hope. That's what hope felt like. I hadn't felt hope in so long. I was afraid to even hope. And even though I wasn't sure that she was... Did I lose it?
Thanks, bro.
It worked for you?
Hello.
Oh, what the fuck?
Hello.
Okay, so can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay. No. Well, how'd you hear me then? Oh.
They went to AV with it.
Is it going to be a while? What should I do?
Just keep going. Keep going, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to try to make this work. I'll just try to make this work, and hopefully you'll hear me. She offered me hope, and that was something I hadn't felt in a long time. And even though I didn't necessarily believe that I didn't have to live like that anymore, I somehow knew she believed it. And all it took was for me to know that somebody believed in me and wanted to help me in my recovery. Once that happened, it was on. Because I bought into this program and I believed, regardless if you know what I mean? I spent years in active addiction. I lost myself in any dream that I ever had. Fuck. You guys ain't making this easy, shoot. So whenever someone did that for me, it inspired me. I'm talking about like somebody whose like spirit is almost broken, that there's just a small flame that's left in their spirit. Something is happening up here.
That's real. Doing great. He's got it.
Okay. Thank God you're young. You don't have to live like that anymore either. And so I started to believe in this program. I didn't know if it would work for me. I wasn't sure it would work for me. I knew that I had lost my life to the disease of addiction. Look, the only reason I even had a GED was on a bar bet. They bet that I couldn't pass it, and they said they'd buy drinks, and I said, okay, and I took it. It wasn't because the dope man said, do you have a GED, when I tried to cop? Nobody cared. You hear what I'm saying? I lost every dream, every goal, everything any aspiration I had in life was taken by the disease of addiction. And so I didn't know if this was work, but I said, okay, if they believe it, then I'll just try. Maybe, just maybe it'll work. And what happened to me more in the third step was I remember getting to the third step and having a really hard time. And I remember my sponsor suggesting to me that I go around and I ask people to tell me about the God of their understanding. And I used to go around and ask people, what do you believe about God? How did you get a relationship with God? What do you do with God? I don't get this whole God thing. And I remember this guy telling me one time that the God of his understanding had a flat forehead. And I thought, because I like the idea that you could be creative, but I thought, this guy's a lunatic, right? And he said the God of his understanding had a flat forehead because all day long he asked God for direction. And so when he hits like places where he's like, there's a fork in the road, and he says, okay, should I go right or should I go left? And God says, go right. Go right. He says, and I go left. God says, damn, he missed the message. And what he understood was that from missing the message so many times, God had a flat forehead. And I thought to myself, that is cool, because that means God doesn't abandon me if I make a mistake. That means that no matter what, God will be there for the next one and the next one, and I don't have to worry that I'm going to be left without any sense of direction in my life. And because look, I went through the whole thing. I was raised very religious. My mother is still very religious. And we go through a thing where she'll say, you're religious, and I'll say, no, I'm spiritual, and she'll say the same thing. Because she doesn't really get that. But what started this was she used to light candles for me when I was using. And it starts out as those little votive candles, the little ones. And then as the disease progresses, the candles get bigger. Until she's got the big ass candles going. They last for a month, right? She's lighting those candles, and she would send me saint cards. Because she believes in these saints that intervene on behalf of the God that she believes in. So it would start off she'd send me a Saint Anthony for people that are ill, and then she'd send me some other saint, until eventually we got to Saint Jude. I remember I'm in the county jail. My mother sends me a card with some commissary money stuff, and she sends me the Saint Jude card, which is the patron saint of hopeless cases and lost causes. And I remember talking to my mother on the phone and saying, what is wrong with you? Why would you hook me up with that crew? She said, he's a hard one too. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know where else to go. And then I realized when I finally got here that her prayer came true. That I got hooked up with a bunch of hopeless cases and lost causes. That helped me find my way. And so I started to come to some understanding, and what I started to realize was, as I moved to the fourth step, and I had a really hard time with my fourth step, but what I came to terms with is that the step that I am on, if I am struggling with that step, that it has nothing to do with that step. That it has to do with the step before. It's kind of like, it's like walking up the steps over here. Like as we walk up steps, when we go and we walk up the first step and we go to the second step, that all our weight has to be held on the first step in order for us to get to 2. And the same goes with 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, that the step before holds all our weight. And so what I realized was that it's important that the steps are set up the way they are to get spiritual principles to move to the next step. And if I haven't gotten the spiritual principles that I need from the step before, I can't move. And what I came to realize was that I didn't get the willingness and the faith that I needed from the third step in order to move to 4. And I found myself, I had gotten married. I had twins that were premature. He was using. And at night, I used to go down into the basement and I would cry because I didn't want to wake the babies and I didn't want him to wake up. And I used to go down into the basement. I was in so much pain. And I would go down into the basement and I would cry. And I remember down in the basement crying, pleading with God. And this is what changed my whole third step. Pleading with God, because I had been on the 4th step for like 9 months and hadn't written anything. And I'm pleading and I'm rocking. God, please, I can't take this pain anymore. Please, God, help me. That has always been my best prayer. That has always been my best prayer. God, please help me. And I'm rocking on the step, and all of a sudden, it dawns on me. It's that having had a spiritual awakening where the light comes on and it all makes sense. And in that moment, it all comes together. I was sitting on the steps. And it hit me. You're sitting on the steps. Get your ass up. And I started writing. I didn't have a problem with writing after that because I felt that I had been inspired. I no longer was afraid. I was more afraid of what would happen if I didn't write. And I've come to understand that we have to write to get right. We have to. And so then what happened to me is what's really funny is because I was talking to somebody about the 6th step. And what I've come to terms with is that I love the slogans. And what happened to me in the 6th step is I've come to realize if anybody's really familiar with obsession and compulsion, I believe in between obsession and compulsion, there's like a New York second. We think it's on, we're going to do it. And in between that obsession and compulsion, there is that second where we have an intervention opportunity. The only real power we have is the power of choice. That's our will. Our free will, a power of choice. Once we make the choice, it's on. So I can either choose to partner up with a higher power, or I can choose to partner up with a lower power. But I'm going to make a choice, and it's on after that. So what happens between obsession and compulsion is that moment to say, God, please help me. God, please help me. Right? And what I've learned is that that's a lot of what our slogans are about. That we have these quick slogans that have spiritual principles attached to them. that help us get on track when we're getting ready to move in the wrong direction, right? Like if I think about like pride is probably one of my worst character defects. I tend to be extremely arrogant. I really struggle with people telling me what to do. And so I have to work really hard, but whenever this starts to come up where I start getting that thing where it says, oh, obviously they don't know who they're talking to, right? Like that's what'll come up. That's the thought that comes up. Oh, you need to check them. You need to do something quick, right? That stuff starts to come up. And then there's that thing that you guys say, because I hear it in your voice. It's in me. Your spirit has touched my spirit enough that you are now a part of me. And so I hear it said, you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. Because that is the spiritual principle of humility. You're telling me to get humble. You're trying to help me at a time that I am getting ready to be extremely defective. And you're trying to help me get back on track. It's there for all the defects of character. They're interventions. Slogans are spiritual interventions that are meant to help guide us to get us back on track. They're not cute little sayings. They're not clever little quotes. They're life-saving spiritual principles. So when I start getting jealous and envious and start being a hater, right, that you guys tell me, if you want what we have, do what we did, right? You're telling me to get back on track, right? Anger, you know what I mean? I can go to rage with it. Like my mother, when I was little, I used to come home crying that people picked on me. My mother told me one day, if you don't fight, you're going to get picked on for the rest of your life. I started fighting. It never stopped. It never stopped. Look, whenever you guys said, when I came to meetings and you guys said, some of us are sicker than others, I knew which one I was. I knew which one I was. It was a struggle for me at an area service meeting not to jump over a table and hit somebody. Seriously, if I made it through an area service meeting and didn't do something physical, I did good. And the beauty of it was that people that I served with knew that. They knew that. Because they would even be like, don't say that to her, please. Try to go around that another way, but don't say that to her because she can't get that. You know what I mean? Like really, sometimes I think we forget that, people come in here at different levels of illness and that we expect certain things to happen at certain times with people, forgetting that everybody didn't come in here at the same level. And that we're going to have to really learn to be more patient with people in their process. So I learned that through the 6th step. That I have to learn to practice principles to combat some of this stuff, or I'm going to find myself in jackpots clean all the time. Like I know one of my biggest triggers for one of my defects is I can hear it. I know I'm in trouble. It's a red flag. I hear in my head saying, go ahead, you deserve it. I know when I hear that, I'm getting ready to either spend money I don't have, right? I'm getting ready to do something I shouldn't do, eat something I shouldn't eat, right? I know that's a red flag. But guess what? So does the disease know it now. So now it don't come at me anymore with you deserve it. It doesn't come because you guys even taught me. When I start getting gluttonous like that, what did you tell me? 1 is too many and 1,000's never enough, right? You taught me about moderation. When I start getting greedy and I want to say, it's mine, like, I don't want to let people know what I got because I'm afraid they might ask me for some of it, right? And I keep saying, it's mine, what do you tell me? Because that's greed. What do you tell me? You can only keep what you have by giving it away. You teach me generosity. Every one of them was something. Look, here comes the 7th step. Now, after I learn this stuff, I still struggle with this stuff. It's like putting garbage in a bag and then going back in the bag to see if I can, like, maybe salvage something. One of my biggest problems was that I was a fighter. And I wasn't just a fighter. I was just mad at the world. But one of the things I used to do that was really, like, volatile was I spit on people a lot. I said some of us are sicker than others. And so, especially, I have trouble with road rage. So when people would cut me off or people would do something that I thought wasn't like proper travel etiquette, I would roll up on alongside them and I would spit on their window. So this one day, I'm trying to tell you, I wasn't the healthiest person, okay? I'm doing really good here, okay? So this one day, this guy cuts me off, and I have had it. It was like the last of it. He cut me off. I am no longer going in the direction now that I was going. Because I got the thought, I forgot the intervention. God, please help me. And it's on now. It is on. I am caught in the grip. And it is on. I don't care where I'm going. I am on a mission now. And I start following the guy. I'm going blocks out of my way, trying to catch up with him at a light. And as I'm doing this, I am like Pavlov's dog. I am salivating as I am going. This isn't something I even thought through. This is automatically happening to me. You hear what I'm saying? This isn't even like a conscious decision. You hear what I'm saying? It just starts happening. It just starts happening. Now I have a mouth full. I missed him at 2 lights, but he had to stop at the 3rd one. And I'm good to go. I pull up alongside of him. I put my window down. I hit the horn. He looks over. He puts his window down. He says, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I think I cut you off back there. And I didn't mean to do that. I apologize." And all I could do was swallow. Because God has mercy. Right? Even when I don't ask for help, if I can get a pause in there, God will intervene because God honors effort. And what happened in the 8th step, and I think it was, I don't know if his name was Daryl, but he spoke earlier today, and we was talking about making amends, and I had some major resentments with my mother. I really did not have a good relationship with her. I worked really hard in my 8th and 9th step to get to know my mother and found out that my mother's not a very nurturing person. She's not a hugger and I found out that while she was growing up, she lived in a family where her father was an alcoholic and there wasn't much. She said, I remember her saying to me one time, the only time I ever remember getting a hug or held was when I was really sick one time and Grandma held me in the chair and rocked me. And I don't remember ever getting a hug any other time as a child. And in that moment, I got to feel my mother's pain. And it's very difficult to hold a resentment when you're empathetic and compassionate for another human being. It says, we say to each other that we seek understanding rather than being understood. And I finally understood what that meant. And so my mother, I no longer held accountable for my pain. And I learned to deal with my pain myself and understood that I was the cause of it and it wasn't her fault. And then what happened was my youngest daughter got caught in active addiction. And this happened when she was like 15. But I couldn't ever really address it because every time I would try to address it, she would call the CYF on me. I would try to put her out, or I would try to set boundaries or something. She'd call CYF because the beauty of it is the kids today know that they have some pull. And like he was saying, you can't whoop a kid no more. Right? You can't even talk bad to them without them calling CYF. She called the police on me. Said, my mother's trying to put me out and somebody needs to come here and get her. So we wound up having all these counselors and everybody come, and I had to wait because she would use and she knew I could do nothing. And it hit when she turned 18. And she turned 18, and I wished her a happy birthday and threw her out of the house. And she said to me, what kind of a mother would throw her youngest daughter out of the house in the middle of winter with no place to go? What kind of a mother would do that? And I said to her, and this is the beauty of it, that whenever you don't realize, we don't realize as we're making amends, that we are freeing ourselves up. We don't realize that until time comes when we're no longer holding someone else accountable for us, that we are no longer holding ourselves accountable for anyone else either. And I said to Rhea, you're asking the wrong question. The question is, what kind of a daughter would have a mother throw her out in the middle of the winter with no place to go? What kind of a daughter would do that? And it didn't take long. 6 months later, Rhea came back, and she has been clean for 2.5 years. And what I've come to learn about the 10th step is that I've started to realize that I have to check myself before I wreck myself. That's really what that step is about. I have to pay attention. I got to check myself before I wreck myself. I got to stay on top of this because, look, just like I shared with you earlier, this disease is progressive. I don't play around. I know that if I'm not vigilant and if I don't keep careful watch on this, it will slide up on me. My father passed away a couple years ago, and it slid up on me. And it tried to tell me, it does the same thing. I struggle with, why do bad things happen to good people? And that belief is difficult for me to grasp sometimes. And it slid in there on me, and I started thinking things like, then why bother being good? Then why bother doing right? Then why even care anymore? And I had to work really hard. Look, anybody that's new, I don't know if you experience this in meetings at all, but there's times in meetings where we have people with time, significant clean time, say, I don't know much about this program. And I think to myself, how can you be here for all these years and not know much about this program? But let me just explain it. Because it says in our literature that everything we know is subject to revision. And what worked for us yesterday or a month ago or a year ago may not work for us again today, because the disease knows what works for us. And it puts holes in that so that it doesn't work again. And that's why we have to revise what we know so that we can continue to maintain recovery. So if I say to you, I don't know much, I'm in revision. I'm just in revision. Don't panic. I'll know soon. I'm just revising what I know. And it's funny because in the 11th step, my oldest daughter is a nurse. This is the one I took through active addiction with me. I swore she used to call me Mummy because I was always wrapped in gauze. So she becomes a nurse, and it was one of my aspirations of, like wanting to be a nurse when I was younger. But I had by then, you know what I mean, been to the federal penitentiary. I have numerous felony charges. And so I decided when I got clean that I would be a counselor. And I'm not knocking anyone that's a counselor, because God knows we need you. But it wasn't my dream. I just thought that's all I could do in life. I figured the good thing about counseling was that, if you had a background in active addiction and you got clean, you actually had a resume. You know what I mean? So I'm talking to my daughter, who's now a nurse, and she's telling me about what she's doing. And I said to her, yeah, I always wanted to do that, but, I lost the opportunity to do that through active addiction. Active addiction robbed me of the opportunity to, have my dreams come true. And my oldest daughter, who's familiar with the program, says to me, don't you guys talk about, God can do anything, and, God's good all the time, and, if God's for you, who could be against you? And, so where's your God now? Great, that's great. And she started to talk to me about how funny it is how, we use that term it isn't God's will. If it is God's will. If it's God's will, I'll get this much clean time. If it's God's will, I'll get this job. If it's God's will, if it's God's will. And forget that we actually play a part. And that God is very willing, and sometimes we're not. And then she says to me, so how do you know it isn't God's will for you to be a nurse if you never tried? Shit. And so I said, okay, fine. I'm in my 40s by then. You know what I mean? I would have to go back to school and start fresh, everything over. So I said, okay, well, let me see. I'm going to call the state and ask them, will they give me a nursing license with felony charges? So I called the state up, and I asked the state, and the state says to me, well, go to school, and then when you apply, we'll let you know. Which is not the answer I'm looking for. But it's an answer of blind faith. It's an answer of blind faith. Praying only for the knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry that out. Only. So I said, okay, I'm going to call the school and ask them if I do all these prerequisites, because I had to do everything. Microbiology, biology, the whole 9 yards, anatomy and physiology, everything. And so I call the school and say, if I do all these prerequisites, will you let me in the school? And they say, well, do the prerequisites and we'll let you know. So here's what I came to believe. I came to believe that if it's not a no, then it's a go. That if the door doesn't close, then it has to be open. And that all I have to do is keep stepping through. Yeah. So I started going to school. And I finished school and I applied to the nursing program. And they let me in. And then I applied to the nursing program and finished the nursing program and applied for my state license. And they said, I can't give you a temporary license. When nurses graduate, they're considered a GN, and they apply for a temporary license until they take their boards. They said, because of your criminal record, I cannot give you a GN license. But if you take your boards and you pass your boards, we'll give you your license as a registered nurse. So I said, okay, fine. So I took my boards, and I passed my boards, and I got my license. And then I said, okay, God, but who's going to hire a nurse with a criminal background and all these felonies? I'm going to go to apply for a job and say, oh, by the way, I have numerous drug charges. Can I have the keys to the narcotic drawer? Yeah, right. So I said, okay, fine, but we've gotten this far. I'm going to step out still on blind faith. I'm going to believe that if it's not a no, it's a go. And so I apply for positions, and I think to myself, God, please don't bring me this far to say psych. Don't bring me this far to say psych, because I'm 50 now, and this isn't even funny anymore. Like, this is it. You know what I'm saying? This is it. So I apply for a job, and I get a call, and I get hired as a psych nurse. And I remember the first day I'm working, I'm standing in the hall on the psychiatric floor, and one of the patients comes running down the hall and starts yelling to me, are you my nurse? Are you my nurse? Are you my nurse? And it dawns on me that I'm his nurse. And I say to him, yes, I'm your nurse. And he's like excited, and I'm excited, and we're both excited because in the moment, at that moment, I realized how miraculous God is.
Yeah.
From where I came from to where I was at that moment, just be in that moment where you're awed by God. Where you just never, ever... Look, when I came in here and you talked about being a responsible, productive member of society, I thought to myself, why? Like, can you just help me stay out of jail? Is it possible you could just do that? And I was living... Look, it was because I believed what you told me. You said, lost dreams awaken and new possibilities arise, and I believed you. And because I believed that, you inspired me to fulfill my dreams. It didn't really matter if they gave me the nursing license or not, as much as it mattered that when I looked in the mirror and that reflection looked back at me, that I could say to myself, you did everything you could to make your dreams come true. That I did not abandon me. That I did not quit on myself. That I did not settle for less, and I did not give up. And that was more important than the license. And then what happens in the 12th step is that now we have a purpose, that life has some meaning. Look, my son was very disabled when he was born. He had a lot of health problems, a lot of vision problems. And so when he would go to school, he would get teased a lot. And so when he would play sports, nobody would pick him. And one day he came home from school, and he said, Mama, I got picked to be the captain of the soccer team. And I was excited with him, and I was like, great, that's great. What does that mean? And he says, that means I get to pick everybody to be on my team. I get to pick them. And I said to him, cool, so did you pick the good people first to be on your team? Like the people that can play really good so you could win? And he said, no. And I said, well, who did you pick? He said, I picked the people that never get picked to be on my team. And I said to him, okay, but after that, the next person you picked was the good person that could play really good. And he said, no, I picked all the people that never get picked to be on my team. And I says, okay, but I'm thinking, okay, but God saw his goodness and intervened and they won, and you know what I mean? It all and I said, so did you win? And he said, no, we got beat real bad. And I said, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. And he said, no, Mama, don't be sorry. He said, because we were all just so happy that we got picked. And I related to it because we are here today as a result of being picked. We showed up and we were chosen. We answered the call. We rose to the occasion. We're not here by mistake. We're here because we were willing. And I just want to close my grant sponsor used to share at meetings and whenever she shared about building bridges, and she talked about how important it is to help the new people. And she used to share this poem. And I just wanted to close with it in her memory. It's called Building Bridges. And it says, an old man traveling a lone highway came in the evening cold and gray to a valley that was deep and wide, through which was flowing this rippling tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. That rippling stream held no fear for him. And he turned when he reached the other side to build a bridge to span the tide. Old man, cried a cynical voice from near, you're wasting your time building here. Your journey's over. It's the end of the day. Why build a bridge to span the way? The man raised up his old gray head. Good friend, this road I've traveled, he said. There followeth after me today a newcomer whose feet must pass this way. And this road, which was difficult for me, for that newcomer may a pitfall be. They too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for them. I'm an addict named Kathy.
Beautiful.